Hello everybody. Je pense que c'est la première fois qu'on a une majorité d'anglophones. It's the first time we have more English translation with voir un peu des images de Scott en cours. C'est un film de Scott en France. Donc ce petit film a été fait par Bertrand Delapierre.
4 or 5, yeah.
C'était l'année 5-7 minutes, je crois.
For me to slow down in running, it's in training for mountain trail races, training for road ultras. I'm always going. I'm always constantly, pushing the body, go, go, go. And with the yoga, it's a time for me to kind of tune down the body a little bit, kind of slow down and take some time, focus on breath, focus on body awareness. And it's helped me transition a lot of the body awareness, the breathing into my racing and training. When times are hard in an ultramarathon, I'll try to focus on my breath or my form and try to take my mind off of what's coming next, the difficulties or maybe the tough spots I'm dealing with. Diet is really important. I've come from eating a lot of fast food and junk food in my early 20s, and now I'm over the years really learned that a vegan diet is probably one of the best diets out there. I can eat all kinds of foods and enjoy them. It allows me to recover and bounce back from all the hard workouts that I've done. And longevity, for me, I'm in this sport. I've been racing hard for 16 years. 36 now, so I'm one of the older guys out. And I think the consistency of my racing and training and performing at a high level, the diet has been instrumental in that, keeping that going. And long because I want to keep running until the day I die. So I think for a lot of people that's important as well. And I had to transition from road training, in May, and transition to the trails. So I think more than anything, yes, recovery time was important, but I needed to get my my mountain legs back, and I feel like they've definitely come back, and I feel like I'm in the best shape actually I've probably ever been for Ultra Trail Tour de Mont Blanc. And it's an exciting race. There are a lot of people out there. The competition, I think it's the most competitive 100-mile race in the world for mountain trail running. So yeah, there's just nothing like it. It's a fantastic event. It's a good thing. The more people we can get out exploring their bodies, exploring nature, testing, and seeing what they can do, I think it's a good thing. In the U.S., ultramarathoning is growing now too, and our races will have to decide on whether they can grow or what they'll do next. It's not only a physical challenge with the climbing and descending, but also with the mind. The other thing too is the weather can play a big role in things. It could be warm 1 minute, and then it could be winter the next, and you have to be ready for anything. So it's a sheer test of physical and mental capabilities, and maybe something even deeper. It's pretty unfortunate, but some very bad weather blew in, and the race organization thought that with the weather, very bad landslides had occurred on the Col de la Seine, So they made a decision to cancel the race for the safety of the runners. But it's unfortunate for many of us who trained many months and had been preparing and only got to run 30 kilometers. Sometimes Mother Nature wins, and the race committee decided to make a decision that would be safe for the rest of the runners. Well, I definitely want to come back. This year I was in the best shape ever for the Ultra Trail Tour de Mont Blanc, and it's unfortunate I spent all this time training at altitude, so I definitely want to come back, and this is an amazing event, and want to test and see what I truly can do on this course. It's a pleasure to be back here. I've come back now. This is my fourth time for the UTMB, and it's a.
Donc à l'UTMB, Antoine, tu peux traduire les.
So we just seen Scott racing in
Cette présence à l'UTMB donc 2010, c'était la dernière fois que tu es venu en compétition.
This was the last time you came to race UTMB in 2010?
2011.
Yeah.
And that was also the year, two years in a row that it was restarted and canceled down.
2 ans de suite, 2010 et 2011, où les éditions ont été modifiées et même arrêtées. 2010 et modifié en 2011.
Et maintenant, c'est plus un projet qui est validé pour toi de venir sur une course comme ça.
And now you don't have any incentive to race it again?
Oh, I mean, I'd love to come back, but with now this year, I wish I was running. The weather's going to be amazing, but it was very hard to plan the schedule. So maybe one day I'll come back as well, because it's a special place, special race, and I enjoy it very much. So one day, I've been trying to do new. Sorry, is it too much? Sorry, I forgot.
Il dit que si, bien sûr, il aimerait bien revenir, mais bon, il y a des agendas assez remplis et c'est pas simple, et que cette année il regrette un peu parce que la météo est tellement favorable, mais que bien sûr il aimerait bien retenter, revenir.
And I'm trying new adventures. I've been racing for 20 years now. So this last month I was in the eastern U.S. doing the Appalachian Trail. So some of these exciting new adventures are the things I'm focusing on now.
Et dernièrement il a passé d'autres étapes de course. Il a fait le trail des Appalaches.
La chaîne des Appalaches, hein, c'est ça. La chaîne intégrale. On peut dire quand même how many kilometers?
Ouais.
Oh, kilometers? It's 2,200 miles, so over
2,200 miles, it's around
almost 4,000, yeah.
Presque 4,000 kilomètres. Et dénivelé?
In the anyway, it was 550,000, so almost over 500,000 vertical feet. So in meters,
500 000 mètres de dénivelé.
yeah, it was close to.
Pour aller à la Lune.
Yeah.
Pieds, 500 000 pieds.
Avec 500
500,000 feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's over plus de 150 000 mètres de dénivelé.
How many days?
In 46 days. Yeah.
46 jours.
Donc c'est en gros 80 km. Ah, tu vas allumer la lumière? Désolé, ça va être un peu de chaleur, mais c'est pour filmer. Donc, pour revenir au livre, il y a 3 ans à peu près, Scott a publié un livre aux États-Unis qui s'appelle Hit and Run. Et nous, cette année, au printemps, des éditions Guérin, nous avons publié la version française de ce livre qui s'appelle toujours Hit and Run. Comme ça, on n'a pas fait compliqué. C'est-à-dire que peut-être certains d'entre vous ont suivi, on avait publié déjà en 2013, fin 2012, un livre qui s'appelait Born to Run, de Chris McDougall, qui a eu un très grand succès aux États-Unis, un beau succès en France aussi. Et dans ce livre, il y avait un personnage qui nous a fascinés, qui s'appelait Scott Jurek. Donc, quand on a vu sortir son livre Hit and Run, d'abord on l'a lu, enfin on a essayé de le lire avec notre très pauvre anglais, mais on a vu tout de suite que c'était un livre extraordinaire, qui nous a beaucoup touchés et il s'est tout de suite dit à la suite de Born to Run, on fera Hit and Run. Et voilà. Ouais.
So just to recap, Scott 3 years ago wrote this book, Hit and Run, and the édition Guérin edited another book in French, Born to Run. And in that Born to Run book, there was a personage of Scott Jurek which intrigued them. So they decided to get in touch with him and to edit the Hit and Run in French, the French version, which is just...
Alors pour aborder les différents sujets autour de la vie de Scott, on s'est dit qu'on allait lire des extraits. Et comme il y a beaucoup d'anglophones, on va lire une fois en français, un extrait en français, une fois en anglais.
So
ça, tout le monde sera content.
We're going to picked a few passages of the book that they will be read in French and in English. So.
Je commence par l'avant-propos, c'est le tout début du livre, qui est assez court et qui donne une bonne idée de l'image de ce que Scott se fait de lui-même. Enfant, j'avais une tension artérielle élevée. Puis je suis devenu un adolescent fluet dont les autres se moquaient en me surnommant Pimi. Je n'étais pas le plus rapide de l'école, ni le plus fort, ni même le plus intelligent. J'étais d'une banalité consternante. Pas même capable de dire ce dont j'avais envie. J'étais comme tout le monde, exactement. Puis j'ai mis le doigt sur quelque chose. Je ne vous dirai pas qu'il suffit de croire en ses rêves pour les voir se réaliser. Je vais plutôt vous montrer de façon concrète comment je me suis transformé de l'intérieur et comment vous pouvez le faire à votre tour. Que vous soyez marathonien ou simple jogger, nageur ou cycliste, jeune ou vieux, gros ou maigre, vous pouvez y arriver. Je le sais parce que je l'ai fait. Le récit de ma vie vous paraîtra très banal. Non pas dans les détails, à moins que vous ne soyez retrouvés comme moi face contre terre dans la vallée de la mort, mais en termes de désir. C'est l'histoire de tous ceux qui se sont un jour sentis coincés, de tous ceux qui rêvaient de faire mieux, d'aller plus loin. Je me suis retrouvé piégé comme ça, il y a quelques années, sur l'un des points les plus bas et les plus chauds de la planète. C'est là que je vais commencer mon histoire, ou plutôt, votre histoire. On traduit pas, ce serait trop long. Translate. After that, there is English.
How many
Continuation English.
speak English? How many speak English? Okay. Half. Okay. So there's a passage that I like to read many times. How many people have read Eat and Run, whether in French or English? Okay, so a number of you. So many of you have read. I'll read a part of the book. At the very beginning, I talk about Badwater. It's a 135-mile race through Death Valley. So I'll start. I'll read this little section because I think it kind of sums up things. So I'm basically I've been vomiting, having a very bad time at mile 70. So if you can imagine, I'm contemplating right now whether or not I'm going to continue the race. I'm thinking to myself, this was stupid. Why am I doing Badwater less than 2 weeks after winning Western States 100? So this is what I'm thinking right now. The stars didn't care. That's another pleasure of running an ultra. The absolute and soothing indifference of the land and sky. So I made a mistake. It wasn't the worst thing in the world. The constellations weren't gossiping about me. Maybe this would help me with humility. Maybe dropping out and being defeated would renew my spirit. Maybe cutting one race short was a good thing. If I could only have made myself believe that. And I know you all have doubts too in your races. Should I have listened to the trainers and doctors who said that athletes needed to fill their bodies with animal protein? Should I have trained less? I had thought I was invincible. I closed my eyes. I had been schooled by nuns, raised by a mother who had been sprinkled with holy water from Lourdes, hoping it would rise her from her wheelchair. Now it was me who could not rise. I hadn't always been the fastest runner, but I had always considered myself one of the toughest. Maybe acceptance of my limits was the toughest thing of all. Maybe staying there where I wasn't weak, but strong. Maybe accepting my limits meant it was time to stop being a runner, to start being something else. But what? If I wasn't a runner, who was I? I looked again at the stars. They had no opinion on the matter. Then, from the desert, a voice, an old familiar voice. Okay, there's some children here. I'll skip over the swear word. Yeah, okay. You're not going to win this effing race lying down in the dirt. Come on, jerker, get the F up. It was my old friend Dusty. That made me smile. He always made me smile, even when everyone around me was cringing. Get the F up, Dusty yelled, but I couldn't. I wouldn't. Sweeney is out there. We're going to take that dude. We're going to take that dude. I looked at my friend. Couldn't he see I wasn't going to take anyone? He squatted, folded himself until our eyes were inches apart, and he stared into my eyes. Do you want to be somebody, jerker? Do you want to be somebody? So, and that's the title of that chapter is somebody. So, again, I think we've all been there, or maybe some of you race where you're thinking to yourself, I can't do this. This is crazy. A friend, maybe a crew person will and try to get out there. So I think that sums up kind of what I've been thinking through at this point, as well as maybe wondering, this diet that I was following, this vegan diet really was the best thing. So I think it's good to have doubts. Sorry, speaking very quick here, but I think English speakers will understand. You have doubts, and you can paraphrase maybe. You have doubts in your head, about some of the decisions you've made. And I think it's important sometimes to doubt, but then to think back and to gain strength from the experiences that you've had throughout your life.
Donc en gros, il vient de lire un passage sur une course où il était vraiment au fond du gouffre. Il avançait plus et il avait des doutes et il avait son copain là qui voulait plus avancer. Il était en train de penser à plein de choses comme quoi il allait pas s'en sortir et tout le monde, son copain l'encourageait et lui il était là mais c'est impossible et il a pensé à plein de choses, à sa mère qui est dans une chaise roulante et il se dit mais c'est moi maintenant qui peux plus me lever et en fait il a continué à réfléchir et ça l'a remotivé et en fait ça a un peu généré toute l'idée de son livre et de l'idée de son régime et de savoir de toute sa carrière que tout le monde on a des doutes et qu'il faut vraiment croire en ce qu'on fait et pousser quoi.
Une question justement sur cette partie-là qui peut lancer vraiment peu un corps, les limites du corps. Et c'est vrai qu'aujourd'hui, avec et d'après toi, Scott, est-ce que c'est toujours
There is not even further.
I think it's magic, but I think it's in all of us, and we all have that inner strength.
Ne suit plus.
C'est qu'il parle de ses exploits, mais il parle aussi
but it's a passage about the family and the
mais la pâte était trop épaisse. Soudain, elle s'est mise en mouvement et le mouvement s'est poursuivi. Elle avait mis ses mains autour des miennes. Nous tracions une spirale jaune pâle de sucre et de beurre et j'étais convaincu que je ne le devais qu'à moi. C'est l'un de mes premiers souvenirs. Je pensais que ma mère était célèbre. Employée chez les fabricants de fours à micro-ondes Litton, elle expliquait aux femmes comment cuire le bacon et faire des gâteaux au chocolat avec cette nouvelle invention. Le Minnesota Egg Council l'avait embauché pour parler des œufs à la radio, ce qui l'a amené à tourner des spots publicitaires pour la télévision, puis par la suite à animer sa propre émission sur une chaîne du câble. Son credo, auquel je crois toujours, était « Pas besoin d'être un grand chef pour faire de la bonne cuisine ». Pour les repas familiaux, elle faisait du rôti de porc, du poulet grillé ou des steaks et confectionnait la purée elle-même. Dans mes souvenirs d'enfance, il y a toujours une tarte qui refroidit sur le bord de la fenêtre de la cuisine, nous enveloppant ma mère et moi d'épais effluves pâtissiers et fruitiers. Aucun d'entre nous n'a jamais parlé du lien primordial qui se créait via la nourriture, ni de celui qui nous unissait les uns aux autres, comme à la terre dans laquelle nous cultivions nos légumes. Personne n'a jamais fait remarquer qu'attraper, vider, cuire et manger un poisson ensemble était une sorte de communion familiale. Ma mère insistait pour que nous restions assis 1 heure entière au dîner. Si quelqu'un l'avait remerciée pour les cookies qu'elle avait cuisinés elle-même sans utiliser de préparation, elle l'aurait pris pour un fou. Je l'ignorais, mais j'apprenais beaucoup sur la nourriture et sur ses liens avec l'amour. Quand on cuisinait ensemble, elle me racontait sa vie d'étudiante et m'assurait que mon tour viendrait. Quand mon père n'était pas là, elle me demandait de prendre ma batte de baseball et m'amenait dans la cour où elle me lançait la balle avec application. Elle me disait qu'elle était fière d'avoir un fils travailleur et que je ne devais pas en vouloir à mon père pour sa dureté. Il avait simplement trop de soucis. Donc c'est un passage assez émouvant de l'enfance de Scott et ces moments d'intimité avec ta mère, c'est vraiment quelque chose qui t'a construit.
Yes, it's a very touching passage about all this intimate relationship with your mother, cooking, and all the time spent, and reconnaissance towards you and
Yeah, so maybe what I thought we would do, some of you have already read the book, so maybe if you have, maybe if we take 1 or 2 questions about my childhood, maybe that would be a good way to describe a little bit more, because I know some people might want to know more. So maybe if you have a question about how food was important to me growing up, or about my childhood, so if there's any questions.
En français, il propose si vous avez des questions sur son enfance ou sur la nourriture, allez-y.
Obviously, your relationship with your mother and her, she had MS, is that correct?
Yes.
And you just kind of, I think that was a passage about basically you guys cooking together and
Yes.
you kind of helping her cook. And
Yes.
so is that, you obviously have a relationship with running and food, but does that really go back to those bonds that were created there?
Definitely. You want to say the question? So he was asking about does my relationship with food start with my early days with my mother?
Ah, d'accord. Oui, il demandait si la relation avec la nourriture a commencé dans son enfance avec le partage avec sa mère dans la cuisine pour préparer les repas et apprendre les recettes.
So it definitely was, and some of the earliest memories I have as a child when I was 3 years old was cooking with my mother and cooking with my grandmother. She would bake fresh bread. My mother was always making fresh food in the kitchen, and so even as a boy, I was out hunting and fishing. But then I also spent time with my mother, my grandmother, and my aunts, and they taught me a lot about cooking.
Il dit qu'effectivement une grande influence, déjà tout jeune, tout petit, à 3 ans, il se rappelait voir sa mère préparer des plats, tout ça, et ça a eu une grande influence sur la suite.
And my mother, earlier today, a couple of people are saying, oh, well, Scott, I don't like to cook, so it's hard for me. I'm not a very good cook, but my mother used to say, if you can read, you can cook. So if you can read a recipe, anyone can cook. So
Il dit que beaucoup de ses amis lui disent « Ah, mais moi, la cuisine, pas que ça m'intéresse pas, mais je sais pas faire la cuisine et tout ça. » Et lui, il dit que sa mère, en fait, lui disait « À partir du moment où tu sais lire, tu sais faire la cuisine. »
Et d'ailleurs, pour ceux qui n'ont pas lu le livre, sa caractéristique, c'est qu'à chaque fin de chapitre, il y a une recette. Moi, j'ai une question aussi par rapport à cet enfant. Yeah, just a question. L'ambiance était dure parfois à la maison, parce que ton papa était dur, ta maman après était malade et tout. Et le fait de commencer à courir, est-ce que c'était pas une façon aussi pour toi de te retrouver et puis de sortir aussi de cette pression un peu à la maison?
So he's asking that somehow your childhood, sometimes it was a bit difficult at home with a hard father and things like this, and he's wondering if this running got you, liberated you, it's helped a lot to take it up on yourself.
Yeah, I think, you know, we many times, like in life, we use something, whether it's sport or our passion, maybe it's art, to help us through, I guess, maybe sorting out our life. And running was something for me. It gave me an outlet or a way of, I would say, like finding myself, but maybe helping me understand more who I was and where I came from.
Donc effectivement, Scott dit que de courir, ça l'aidait à peut-être pas se rechercher, mais certainement à passer des caps et à trouver une direction, de se sentir mieux.
C'était une révolte aussi, non? Parce qu'on voit, on va parler de Dusty après, mais Dusty, c'est un révolté, et toi tu es l'anti-Dusty, c'est-à-dire si toi tu es l'ange et Dusty c'est le démon, mais toi tu es un ange, et il faut que tu te révoltes aussi un peu, il ne faut pas être des anges tout le temps.
So it's a bit of a way to become a devil, like taking sign on Dusty, who was you were the angel and he was the devil, and you needed to get out of yourself, and maybe got influenced by him to get that attitude as well.
Yeah, and that's where I describe in my book, I have many people who influenced me. Dusty was one of those individuals, my friend Hippie Dan, and I had these colorful characters, very interesting people that had a big influence on my life. And I think everyone has their Dusty or their Hippie Dan, or people that have helped maybe get them to the starting line here at UTMB, or get you started running, or maybe changed your diet or your lifestyle. So we need those, I call them instigators, people who influence us.
Il dit qu'il a eu pas mal de caractères dans sa vie, de gens qui l'ont influencé, plusieurs de ses amis, et il pense que de toute façon on a tous des passages où on rencontre des gens qui nous influencent et qui nous dirigent vers différentes activités, quoi.
Tu veux que je lise le passage sur Dusty en français, ou tu veux toi lire
You
un
can do it in
passage
French, and then maybe a couple questions. Yeah.
Okay.
Again, is that okay?
Ok, perfect. Donc voilà un petit passage pour ceux qui ne le connaissent pas encore sur le fameux Dusty, qui est un personnage important du livre. Le père de Dusty passait sa vie au bar, et sa mère, qui travaillait à l'église luthérienne, lui demandait le plus souvent d'aller jouer ailleurs en lui donnant une pièce de 25 cents. Il allait au Y, le YMCA, l'association des jeunes, avec son BMX, et il passait la journée à nager, à courir et à chercher la bagarre. L'année de ses 12 ans, son père avait pris la voiture pour aller au bar et n'était jamais revenu. Il avait demandé le divorce peu après et n'avait pas vu son fils pendant des années. Dusty était rarement chez lui. Quant à moi, je passais mon temps à réviser, à aider ma mère à la maison, à skier, à pousser de la fonte, une activité que j'avais découverte en stage, et à sortir avec ma copine. Les filles aiment les sportifs, semble-t-il. Jenny is away. Dusty buvait. C'était une notoriété publique. On savait aussi, ou on croyait savoir, qu'il insultait les flics et qu'il sortait non seulement avec les filles du lycée, mais aussi avec des serveuses et des étudiantes. Il ne se contentait pas de laisser ses adversaires sur place pendant les courses, mais les invectivait, se moquait d'eux et insultait leur famille au passage. La discipline lui était totalement étrangère et il la dilapidait dans son prodigieux talent. Gosse de riches, zonards et cutéreux le savaient tous. Au cours de l'été 92, alors que Dusty et moi étions juniors, j'allais pourtant découvrir l'étendue de mon ignorance à son sujet. Nous étions tous les deux au championnat junior des États-Unis, c'est à Rumford dans le Maine, et il y avait des fondeurs de tous les États où on pratique la discipline. Les conditions ne pouvaient pas être pires. Il faisait 12 degrés et la neige ressemblait à de la crème glacée. Puis, il n'avait plus des cordes, et un coup de froid brutal avait transformé les pistes en patinoire. La nuit suivante, tous les jours, les entraîneurs nous donnaient pourtant des exercices à faire, et tous les jours, Dusty ramenait sa fraise. Il voulait savoir pourquoi on faisait tel exercice, et pas tel autre, et pourquoi on ne couvrait pas plus de kilomètres. Il nous disait à tous que les entraîneurs étaient des rigolos. Je ne comprenais pas pourquoi ils ne l'avaient pas viré dès le premier jour. Il me disait de ne pas m'en faire, de toute façon, c'était juste une bande de fiottes. Il m'appelait Jerker, de jerk qui signifie abruti, ou le Polac débile, mais le faisait de telle façon que je ne trouvais pas ça insultant. Je n'avais jamais tenu tête à un adulte, ni contesté ce que disait l'entraîneur. Voilà, après il raconte.
And I think this passage really was about the contrast between Dusty and I. I mean, we were so different. It was mentioned, Christophe, earlier, you know, the devil and the angel, but Dusty, like I said, he really, he helped me think differently. I was so very specific with my training.
Donc il dit que ce passage que vient de lire Christophe était sur la différence entre ce qu'il disait tout à l'heure, l'ange et le diable, Dusty et Scott. Et ça m'a beaucoup aidé à penser différemment ces phases d'entraînement, de préparation, justement en faisant le lien avec la différence entre la façon dont Dusty faisait les choses et lui il faisait.
And Dusty was all about you just need to go out and train. You just need to like put in the miles. You don't need to think about, you know, your heart rate and all that. It's all about just working hard. And so I think, and he also, you know, made the training, you know, he would train harder than anyone, but he made it fun. So I think it was really a lesson for me about, you know, finding the joy in running. And he was the first one that got me running ultramarathons, and something I never thought I'd do because I used to hate running. So.
Ouais, donc Dusty, lui, il s'entraînait, il disait qu'il fallait juste s'entraîner au maximum, il s'entraînait plus que les autres, mais il a amené de la joie dans l'entraînement, quoi. Il a rendu les choses plus simples et ça a beaucoup aidé Scott à s'entraîner, quoi, à changer la façon de penser, de s'entraîner.
And maybe one question for anybody has a question about like this time in my life as far as training with Dusty, and anyone have a question?
Si vous avez une question en français à propos de la partie de la vie de Scott lorsqu'il s'entraîne avec Dusty, c'est un peu le début où il commence à faire du sport de haut niveau.
Where is he now, the instigator,
Yeah,
the
Dusty.
antagonist?
Yeah, Dusty's back in Minnesota, and you know it's one of those things. Like our friendship, I would never know when he'd show up, you know, on my doorstep, or be like, oh yeah, I'm in town, I'm driving through. He'd be calling, you know, when he's driving across Nebraska, and say, oh yeah, I'm going to be in Colorado. So Dusty's back in Minnesota doing odd carpentry work. He's also doing some training, but he's, I think he's just being Dusty. That's what it's like. With our relationship, everybody's like, oh, what's Dusty doing now? And you never know what Dusty's going to be doing.
Yeah,
He's one of those friends, you know.
Yeah.
We have friends sometimes who, you just never know. And I think that's the beauty of friends like that, or people that have influenced us. You never know when they're going to come into your life, and I think you have to be open to it. Sorry.
La question c'était qu'est devenu Dusty maintenant, et il dit que Dusty il est là-bas, Minnesota, et il est menuisier, et puis il s'entraîne, mais qu'il dit que en fait la beauté de cette amitié, c'est qu'avec Dusty on ne sait jamais, il est là, il n'est pas là, et quand il arrive, il débarque, il appelle, c'est vraiment une forme d'amitié qu'on ne s'appelle pas, on ne planifie rien, quoi. Il est là-bas juste en train d'être Dusty, quoi, en fait.
Do the next one.
Yeah, you want to read the next one, or if you want to read one part in English?
Okay, we
If
can
you
do.
yeah, you can do
Will you
it.
start in English? You start, and I'll read the same part. This
Okay,
is
if you
about
want.
the-
It's chapter 7.
Yeah.
It's about the meeting in McDonald's.
Okay.
Okay, I finished. Oh, okay. You will see where I start.
Yeah, okay.
Donc, c'est une rencontre chez McDonald's. Ça arrive. Ça se passe comme ça. J'ai rencontré la femme qui a fait de moi un végétarien dans la file d'attente d'un McDonald's. Elle faisait la queue pour un Coca Zéro. Je venais pour déjeuner. Elle était blonde et très souriante. À cause de sa collection inépuisable de sandales, les gars du centre commercial l'appelaient Birkenstock Girl. Elle travaillait dans une boutique de vêtements. Elle étudiait à l'université de Minnesota à Duluth. Et elle faisait tous ses trajets à vélo. Lee était donc pratiquement végétarienne. C'était d'ailleurs assez étrange de la trouver chez McDonald's. Mais nous sommes vite entendus, et son influence m'a fait changer, comme celle de Hippie Dan et de ce qu'il me donnait à lire. Par exemple, The Unsettling of America de Wendell Berry, qui dit que la perte de l'agriculture, c'est la perte de la culture, et qu'on savait autrefois d'où venait ce qu'on mangeait, alors qu'on n'imagine même plus que la barquette de poulet qu'on achète à l'épicerie puisse venir de quelque part.
So, yeah, it's kind of odd. I met my first wife at McDonald's. So I always tell people I grew up hunting and fishing, and I also ate a lot of fast food. So it's kind of ironic that I would later become vegetarian and vegan. So I think it's a lesson for anybody. You can change quite drastically.
Donc il dit qu'il a sa rencontre dans un McDonald's avec une personne qui l'a dirigé vers le végétarisme. Et en fait il dit qu'il a grandi en faisant la pêche et la chasse et que c'est un peu contradictoire qu'il devienne végétarien.
Okay, and so I'll read this paragraph. I met the woman who helped me turn into a vegan in a line at McDonald's. She was waiting for a refill of a Diet Coke, and I was picking up my lunch, which at the time was 2 McChicken sandwiches and an extra large fry. Leah was blonde and smiled a lot. Because she had what seemed like a million pair of Birkenstocks, some of the guys at the mall called her Birkenstock Girl. She worked at a clothing store, was a student at the University of Minnesota Duluth, and rode her bike everywhere. And she was mostly vegetarian, which made her eating at McDonald's sort of odd, I suppose. She and I hit it off, and between Leah and Hippie Dan, some of the books he was giving me, like Wendell Berry's The Unsettling of America, about how the loss of agriculture is the loss of culture, how we've gone from knowing where our food comes from not to even thinking that the package of chicken we buy in the grocery store comes from anywhere. I was changing. Yeah. So this is where I start to transition and change. Yeah.
Ok, je continue en français.
And maybe, or maybe people have questions.
Just a question
In French or
yes,
English.
in
Yeah.
English about this part.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been vegan for like 3 years, and I'm just wondering whether at first like you started to become vegan because of health reasons, or whether it was more like environmental, animal rights.
French question.
Donc la personne dit qu'elle est végane depuis 3 ans et elle se posait la question si Scott est devenu végétarien plus pour des raisons d'éthique environnementale ou pour la santé.
So for me it was health, 100% initially, because again I grew up hunting and fishing. As much as I appreciated nature and animals, for me I was most concerned about health, and not for performance as an athlete, but to avoid disease.
Donc pour lui c'était plus une question de santé, pas pour santé pour la performance, mais pour contre les maladies. C'était vraiment pour la santé générale.
And I think having a mother who had multiple sclerosis, seeing disease in the family at a very young age, working in hospitals as a physical therapist, really started getting me thinking about how I wanted to take care of my life. And that's when I got inspired by, one of the biggest books was Dr. Andrew Weil's Spontaneous Healing. So that was the book that really started getting me think like, okay, I need to change my diet. I have to stop eating fast food as much and maybe this vegetarian thing.
Donc oui, c'est la santé du fait aussi que sa maman avait une maladie grave. Il a été vraiment, il s'est concentré sur le fait d'avoir une hygiène de vie et une très bonne santé et voilà, et de se guérir ou de se gérer sa santé naturellement.
But the more I read, I became, to realize the importance of, the environment and obviously the way we treat animals and such. So I think it's important just how we look at food is probably the most important thing for those changes to occur.
Et puis bien évidemment, petit à petit aussi la cause de l'environnement, tout ça s'est regroupé et fait que les deux, la santé, l'environnement, bien sûr, maintenant tout ce qu'on entend, c'est sûr que les deux jouent, mais c'est d'abord la santé.
En tant que représentant un peu maintenant aux États-Unis de ce mouvement vegan, est-ce que tu as le sentiment aussi que ça dépasse de loin le niveau sportif, mais qu'il y a aussi presque une dimension philosophique, un enjeu de société autour de cette façon de s'alimenter?
Do you feel as maybe this not mode fashion, but the way as a sportsman vegan, it is an effect of society now, not only with sports people, but globally where people are really into it. It's catching on very much so.
Yeah, I'd say around the world, but especially in the U.S., where it was very hard to be a vegan in Minnesota when I started transitioning. But it's changing all over, and I think it's people are wanting to take more notice of what they're putting into their bodies, how they look at food, and I think in Europe and in France, it's much more a part of the culture. In the U.S., it's a lot of fast food. People don't take time to eat, so I think this is a difference that we're seeing now. It's not just for sport and for competition, but people are also seeing the importance of good food taking time to eat, and it still has more way to go, but it's changing.
Aux États-Unis, ça a été très dur au début de passer à ce système de nourriture, parce que les Américains ils sont très branchés fast-food et tout ça, mais ça, en Europe c'est plus dans la culture, mais que ça fait son chemin et que ça avance de plus en plus dans ce sens-là.
Le sentiment qu'on a nous en France, c'est que c'est vrai qu'il y a les choses sont un peu plus extrêmes. C'est-à-dire qu'aux États-Unis, soit on mange effectivement comme tu mangeais avant, c'est-à-dire les saucisses, les œufs, le bacon le breakfast et beaucoup de viande et des hamburgers, ou ils basculent vegan. Mais il n'y a pas tellement de milieu. Alors qu'en France, on a plutôt peut-être tendance à avoir une alimentation intermédiaire avec de la viande, pas en excès forcément, peut-être moins extrême. Est-ce que tu en penses de cette façon aussi qui est peut-être un peu intermédiaire?
Tu dis qu'en France, aux États-Unis, qu'on passe.
C'est plus extrême, c'est-à-dire que les gens, soit ils mangent n'importe quoi, soit ils sont véganes.
It's more extreme.
More extreme.
In Europe, it's more transitional effect where we mix and gradually go towards.
Yeah, it's, well, and I think it's a lot in American culture. We're very much into big cars equal, stronger, more powerful, bigger the better. And so I think with food, it's always thought like
Superman lives in your country.
Yeah, exactly. So it's somewhat, I think, a part of American culture that the extremes are very evident, I think, not just in food, but throughout the culture. But yeah, I think in Europe, it's much easier to see that transition happen, where in the US, it's very extreme, which maybe we have to, though. I think we've gone very extreme with how obesity and lack of exercise and nutrition has not played a role. So it's, I think it's important as a culture to maybe shift that a little quicker. If we do it too slow, it might be too late.
Okay. Il dit que effectivement aux États-Unis c'est tout le plus gros, le meilleur, et que c'est vraiment d'une extrême à l'autre, mais c'est pas plus mal parce que c'était vraiment une extrême mauvaise, et donc il faut passer vite à l'action pour réguler tout ça.
Passer à l'action, justement, il y a un point qui est important dans le livre, c'est que tout à coup, tu gagnes. Qu'est-ce qui se passe?
Talking about action, there's a passage in the book where suddenly you start winning.
And after you know the story. Et après tu t'arrives.
Yeah. Well,
so what happens?
I think for me it was a point in my life when I decided I wanted to run the biggest 100-mile race. I started finding, I think, a talent that I had that I didn't know existed, and I think. Okay, I'm sorry. Say if you want to
Je dis que
translate.
c'est un moment où il a découvert ce talent qu'il ne connaissait pas en lui, et ça a été l'effet déclencheur.
And so I had pretty good success in my first 100-miler. I was second at the Angeles Crest 100, and then I thought, I need to go to the biggest race, the Western States 100 at that time. UTMB didn't even exist. And that was the place where if you wanted to test yourself, or if you wanted to run against the best runners, you went to the Western States 100. So at that point, it was one of those things where I want to test myself, but I also knew I had what it took. And I think something just clicked in my brain where I decided, okay, I want to be the best I can be, and I want to train, the hardest that I need to win this race and to see how far I could go. So it was a big point in my life where I went and followed my passion and followed something that I had a talent for.
Il a découvert ce talent sur une course longue distance, et puis donc il s'est dit ok, je pense que je suis prêt, et donc il a dit il fallait qu'il aille se tester sur la plus dure, c'est Western State.
Yes.
Et donc il s'est entraîné comme un malade, et il savait, il avait déjà l'avantage de savoir qu'il avait les capacités de gagner, et puis donc voilà, il est allé.
Yeah. And I think it's a good example of athletes decide to win a race before they even get to the starting line. And for me, I knew I wanted to win the Western States 100, and I kept thinking about that as I was training, as I was transitioning my diet. I put everything into it.
Une partie de son entraînement, c'était il savait déjà qu'il pouvait gagner cette course, et c'est déjà à moitié gagné quand on sait avant de partir qu'on va pour gagner.
Dans ton livre, tu parles bien évidemment aussi des Tarahumara et du moment où tu es invité par le fameux Caballo Blanco Nicatro pour partager la course des Tarahumara. Cette rencontre, toi, ça n'a pas été quelque chose de forcément évident au départ. T'y croyais pas trop à ce côté les Indiens magiques qui courent sans fatigue.
Donc un passage of the book is when you meet with
C'est ce qui est raconté dans Rencontre, dans le livre Rencontre.
the Tarahumara, the tribute, and you're going to meet with them and with the
Caballo Blanco.
Caballo Blanco. But you are a bit, you're not sure what to think about this.
The first time, after it changed.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
The first time.
Okay. And do you want me to describe, or are you going to read?
No,
first?
you can read in English.
Okay. I'll read in English. Okay. I'll read.
Share. I remember it's 19.
Chapter 19. Okay. And yeah, this was again. I'd always been interested in the Tarahumara, and they were a running people in a culture that I wanted to go and experience. So I was actually going on vacation and holiday, but Caballo Blanco had other plans of putting on this big competition. So this was, I went down to learn from the Tarahumara, and he wanted this big race.
Cette tribu l'avait toujours intrigué dans les Tarahumara et lui il était allé là-bas en vacances mais le chef de la tribu, le Caballo Blanco, lui il avait d'autres, il a monté ses courses, ses challenges, ses courses avec Scott, donc voilà ses vacances.
Okay, and I won't. How many people have read Born to Run? Okay.
Everybody.
So many people. I'll try not to spoil anything if you haven't, but I talk a little bit about some of the things that I experienced that weren't described in the book, and the very first two paragraphs. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. The email, and I describe Caballo Blanco. The first time meeting him was through the internet. So, the email had shown up on my screen in mid-2005. It was from someone named Caballo Blanco, which in Spanish means white horse. I learned later that Caballo had formerly been known as Micah True, and that he had been a boxer, itinerant furniture mover, and middle-distance running sage. But when he emailed me, all I knew is that he had been following my career and that he had a proposition. He lived in an adobe hut dug into the side of a deep, hidden canyon in Mexico. Nearby lived a group of indigenous Indians called the Raramuri running people, also known as the Tarahumara. He said that they were the greatest runners on earth. He wanted me to participate in an epic 50-mile race he had set in the canyon, one of the world's greatest runners, me, against the world's greatest runners in the Copper Canyon, with a prize of 1,000 pounds of corn and $750. This, in fact, was some of the most money I'd ever run for. So, believe it or not, I had to go all the way to Mexico for that. Yeah. I remembered the tribe, the Tarahumara, were the middle-aged guys in togas who smoked cigarettes before the Angeles Crest 100 and couldn't run downhill. So earlier in the book, I just talk about my first interaction with Tarahumarans, and it was at the Angeles Crest 100, my first 100-miler. The greatest runners on earth? I didn't think so. I liked travel and I liked exploring different cultures, and the guys in the togas had always interested me. But the trip would have messed up my schedule. I was training for the Austin Marathon and running a 50-miler immediately after, and it didn't make sense. I didn't speak Spanish, and I didn't know how I'd get down there. Plus, it's not as if it was a big challenge. I'd already beat the Indians. So,
Alors, en français. L'email est apparu sur l'écran de mon ordinateur à la mi-2005. Il provenait d'un certain Caballo Blanco, ce qui signifie cheval blanc en espagnol. J'apprendrai par la suite que ce Caballo Blanco se faisait autrefois appeler Micah True, qu'il avait été boxeur et déménageur itinérant, avant de devenir un esthète de la course de grand fond. Mais son message disait seulement qu'il suivait ma carrière de près. Il vivait dans une hutte de terre sur le flanc d'un canyon abrupt perdu au fin fond du Mexique. Non loin vivaient les Indiens Raramuri, nom qui signifie peuple qui court, également appelé Tarahumara. Selon lui, c'étaient les meilleurs coureurs du monde. Il me proposait de relever un défi d'anthologie sur une course de 50 miles, 80 km, qu'il avait tracé dans ce canyon. L'un des meilleurs coureurs du monde, moi, contre les meilleurs coureurs du monde, eux, avec à la clé 1000 livres de maïs et $750. Je me souvenais de cette tribu, des types en pagne d'un certain âge que j'avais vu fumer au départ de l'Angeles Crest et qui se traînaient en descente, c'était les Tarahumara. J'avais du mal à croire qu'il s'agissait des meilleurs coureurs du monde. J'aime les voyages et les rencontres, et ces mecs en paille m'ont toujours intrigué, mais ça ne collait pas avec mon programme. Je préparais le marathon d'Austin, et courir un 50 miles immédiatement après n'avait pas de sens. Qui plus est, je ne parlais pas un mot d'espagnol, je ne savais pas comment aller là-bas, et ce défi n'était pas une nouveauté, j'avais déjà battu les Anglais.
And so I had no idea what kind of adventure I was going on, and I think that's one thing about adventure travel, and for me I wanted to explore this running culture. And little did I know I would have this, life-changing trip, riding on top of buses and doing all kinds of crazy things in the Copper Canyon with, these wild runners that I met, Jen Shelton and Billy Bonehead. And I think that's one thing about this sport is that you take yourself on adventures, and many of you have traveled from around the world for this race, UTMB, and you're going to have an adventure out there, and you got to be open to the possibility.
Il dit que il ne savait pas à quoi s'attendre à cette aventure, mais que c'est la beauté de la chose, c'est dans l'aventure qu'on ne sait jamais à quoi s'attendre, et puis en fait on découvre et on voyage sur le toit des bus, et on ne sait pas à quoi s'attendre, mais c'est ce qui nous fait vibrer, c'est ce qui nous fait les expériences par l'aventure.
Et la course de grand fond draine autour d'elle des personnages extraordinaires. Il y en a un certain nombre dans le livre, il y en a beaucoup dans Born to Run aussi, qui partent avec vous faire la course chez les Tarahumara d'ailleurs. Mais il y a ce Caballo Blanco, qui est quand même un personnage très particulier. Toi, tu as eu quelle relation avec lui? Quelles ont été tes relations?
So this long distance running drains quite some characters, and such as Caballo Blanco, and he wants to know, Christophe asking what sort of experience you've had, what was the meeting with him, how was the...
Well, it's almost like you couldn't, so when people ask about Born to Run, they're like, did all that really happen? And it did, because, Caballo Blanco was one of these individuals who you think he was out of a movie, or when I first met him, we didn't even know if he was going to be in the town we were meeting him. He was always mysterious, and I think Chris McDougall writes about it was very much that way, because when I wrote emails, I thought, is this guy for real? Sometimes he would be, upset and write me back, and then be like, oh, the race isn't happening, the day before the race. So he was always changing his mind, and, but at the same time, everything happened, and it was a beautiful adventure. So I think ultra running does bring a colorful cast of characters. And Caballo Blanco was one of those people who had a big influence on my life, and also made a big influence on many people. Millions of people around the world have read the book, so it's pretty fascinating.
Avec Caballo Blanco, en fait, Born to Run, on se demandait si c'était pas une fiction ou si ces choses vraiment étaient arrivées. Et puis effectivement, c'était arrivé, mais que Caballo Blanco, c'était un personnage de nulle part, où un peu le fantôme, il avait des sautes d'humeur, il envoyait des mails, il n'était pas content, et bien en fait c'était une expérience formidable, et ça s'est réellement passé, et que c'est ça, une fois de plus, l'ultra, la longue distance fait des rencontres, c'est l'aventure, quoi.
And yeah, having that race in the Copper Canyon, it's really influenced the people of the Copper Canyon, and he's touched a lot of lives, so it's amazing somebody's passion with one little race that, basically 50 people started that first year has grown and changed, maybe, and then of course a best-selling book. So I think the lesson is to follow your passion, and Caballo was one of those individuals who's very passionate. Also, some people thought he was a little crazy at times, but he had such a passion for life and for running and the Tarahumara.
En fait, Caballo Blanco, c'était un passionné, et il a fait de très belles choses, parce que cette course qu'il a montée dans le canyon du cuivre, c'est ça, Copper Canyon, en fait, elle a grandi, et c'est un événement, et ça a changé beaucoup de choses dans la façon de penser sur les courses de longue distance très dures.
Et on peut quand même dire qu'il a eu un destin, malheureusement, il est devenu très célèbre grâce à Born to Run, et il est mort rapidement, il n'a pas pu savourer sa célébrité.
He said that unfortunately he became very famous very quickly with Born to Run, but he didn't savor his fame because he died shortly after.
Yeah. So it's very sad that his story will live on, I think, and nobody would have known, or very few people would have known about Caballo Blanco if Born to Run wasn't written, and now I think he has his life is, I guess, you know, out there for people to be inspired by it. I think it's a beautiful thing. As much as we wish he would have been on the earth longer, he influenced, I think, and will influence so many people.
C'est vrai que son histoire va marquer toute la vie beaucoup de gens, mais en fait, lui il est parti, mais c'est dommage que ça soit terminé comme ça, mais en fait ça va porter et influencer beaucoup de gens et toute son histoire.
Dernière question, puis après je vous laisserai la parole, ça sera à vous de poser des questions. Dans Rencontre, Chris McDougall présente la course minimaliste qu'on appelle en français la course minimaliste. Donc toi tu en penses quoi? Tu es adepte de cette course? C'est comme ça que tu cours?
What do you think of minimalism?
Yeah. I always have worn a very light shoe in most of my racing, so even before Born to Run and minimalism and barefoot running became important. I think many runners too used to run barefoot on the inside of a track to warm up. So I think there were some of these things that were happening, but Born to Run made them more popular. And for me, I think the minimalism movement helped change our shoe, the shoe design, and maybe helped us think differently, which I think was very important. So people still have to find their best shoe for themselves.
Il a toujours, lui, même avant le minimalisme, il a toujours couru sur des semelles très fines, par choix, je pense, et que en fait, ça a influencé le Born to Run, ça peut pousser le mouvement pour le minimalisme, et que ça a fait évoluer un peu les façons de courir de chacun, mais que ça reste quelque chose de personnel. Les gens doivent se retrouver dans la façon dont ils veulent courir sur de la hauteur ou sur du fin, quoi, sur du...
And so for like the Appalachian Trail, I used a shoe that's kind of not super minimal, but not super cushioned, so it's in the middle, the Pure Grit. So I think more people are finding they can't get away with, you can't run barefoot in the mountains here, or you know, a very thin shoe for some people isn't going to work on the technical terrain. So I think the good thing is minimalism helped us maybe find a little bit lighter shoes, lower profile, and this is what the Pure Grit, which I've worked on. And some of the features of minimalism is something I worked on with Brooks for 10 years now. And the first Cascadia was actually fairly low and lightweight. Everyone said, oh, it's too lightweight, too lightweight. But it's interesting that perspective changed. Yeah, yeah, there you go. Exactly. Yeah.
Après, il y a aussi
It's a Brooks
l'histoire
one.
de...
We can show it.
And now you see, and then on the other side you see like Hoka and shoes that are very cushioned. So I think it's good to, it shook up the industry and help people find out what works best for them. And a lower profile shoe is key for stability. And so that's something I think minimalism, you'll see that continue. How light people, I don't know. Barefoot running obviously in the mountains is very hard to do. So.
Ça fait partie de l'évolution, mais toujours est-il que courir en minimaliste ou en pieds nus en montagne, c'est pas possible. Il faut une certaine épaisseur, parce que bon, voilà, on ne peut pas courir pieds nus en montagne, mais que ça fait évoluer, il y a des changements, puis c'est personnel, quoi. Les gens, ça évolue, et c'est surtout aussi au niveau de la légèreté, du poids des matériaux, des chaussures, la torsion et puis le drop, ce qu'on appelle. Donc c'est de l'évolution dans la chaussure.
I think the balance, feeling enough of the trail, but having enough protection. It's like finding that balance.
Trouver l'équilibre entre pas trop peu, mais pas trop.
Mais il faut commencer doucement quand on débute avec le minimalisme. Il ne faut pas vouloir tout de suite faire des grosses distances, parce que l'homme actuellement n'est plus adapté à ce type de déplacement au quotidien.
Yeah, what he's saying is you have to also start gradually with minimalism, because you can really hurt yourself. It's
and this is what,
completely different technique.
Yeah. For barefoot running too, many people were getting injured because they read Born to Run and they're like, okay, I want to be a Tarahumara. Even the Tarahumara use a sandal with protection. So everybody think they ask me, oh, the Tarahumara wear sandals? When you read the book, you think they all run barefoot.
Yeah.
So people would go out and run barefoot or in 5 fingers, which small amounts, like you said, is okay, and gradually transitioning. So for me, I do small amounts like on the infield of a track, or if I'm somewhere that has good grass or beach, but I'm not running 100 miles or 160K barefoot. And I think that's the balance. You have to start slowly, but also how much do you do?
Voilà, il faut un certain équilibre.
D'autres questions? Some questions?
No, sorry.
No?
Oh, I was going to ask you about, well, you used to run in the Green Silence, and that was, you had some say in the environmental
Yeah, it was,
shoe, and why did they not continue with those environmental?
yeah, so we have elements, the Green Silence was a shoe that Brooks made that had more components that were in. So what they did is they brought some of the stuff from the uppers, the outsole, from that shoe into the other models. But the big thing with that shoe, I liked it also for how lightweight it was, low to the ground. So I wouldn't say they discontinued the green sustainable components. They brought it into the other shoes. But as far as discontinuing it, it was one of those shoes that some people loved it.
Well,
and
not the
then other people-
discontinuation of that shoe, but the actual environmental parts of it, like the
Yeah, so those, the components have continued in other
so
models.
they still use that environmental.
Exactly. So like when you read about the different models, it'll say which ones have like the bio mogo, which is the bio midsole material. So in the midsole, and as well as the outsole has basically natural silica rubber versus a petroleum base. So they took components. So it was the flagship green shoe.
Not to bore people with the technical aspects
Yeah.
of shoes, it could go on forever. But
Yeah,
just
but
like
it's
the
a
environmental
statement, yeah,
thing,
because
it's
people,
good.
it's a good question, because I have a hard time, like, I like to wear my shoes until they fall apart, because I feel a shoe should stay, you know, something that you could use for 500, 600 miles.
I'm going to send this to my daughter.
Yeah, exactly. It's your shoes, Scott Jurek color shoes, yeah, pass them on in.
Here's Scott holding your shoe, honey.
But it is important because we throw away so many shoes. And there are companies and nonprofits that recycle the shoes to send them to other countries, because a lot of times they aren't great for running, but people can walk,
I had a friend who used to put plants and flowers in his shoes, and they had a whole garden or yard filled with shoes.
But it's a big issue. I think, to paraphrase in French, it's how we can make shoes more sustainable, maybe compostable so they break down. And that's the idea too, is that of these components, it takes many years, but if you put them in a landfill, they don't sit there for thousands of years. It's the idea to get them to break down in 20 years, 30 years, which is a big commitment.
But
So
people making the shoes, the whole chain.
exactly. So it's a big issue, and it's good to see now more shoe companies are interested in sustainability, green elements. So I keep pushing Brooks to be, because it's an important thing, obviously. People love to run in the mountains, but if we keep throwing away shoes and polluting the earth, it's not really a sustainable. I don't know if you want to paraphrase in French, sorry.
Translator, you have 10 minutes.
Le sujet sur des chaussures fabriquées à base de produits environnement.
Des produits
biodégradables.
Biodégradables.
Donc c'est de plus en plus de marques essayent de se concentrer sur ce sujet qui est d'actualité, pour pas qu'on ait, parce qu'on utilise beaucoup de chaussures et pas que l'univers soit collé de chaussures qui se dégradent pas et voilà, qui restent, qui polluent quoi, en fait. Donc de plus en plus de marques de chaussures recherchent les produits biodégradables dans les components.
Ouais.
Et
puis ils envoient aussi dans des pays
et puis, oui,
peut-être réutilisés.
Voilà, que même si une paire de chaussures, elle a fait 6 km et qu'elle est plus bonne pour courir, mais elle est bien assez bonne pour quelqu'un d'autre, pour marcher, donc la donner et voilà, faire la suite. Bien gérer la fin de vie d'une chaussure.
On pourrait aussi donner des chaussures qui sont polies.
Oui, on peut aussi. On peut.
Another question.
Well, it's kind of around the shoe, but it's kind of around also the environment and stuff. And I know you've been here before. You've gone around the mountain, and you're going around the mountain right now. And I've been here a couple of years before, and just all the glaciers. You know how dramatic the retreat is. I mean, I was just coming from Valorisine up here, and just seeing like the Mer de Glace is so it's just, you know, I think it's kind of those breakup moments for humanity too, but I think it's so great that like trail races, people get out there and they actually see these things. You know, it's not just some documentary you're seeing it maybe. So I think also, I live in France, but as an American, you know, to kind of hold debate about people getting out on the trails or using the trails with your AT thing and that kind of. So it just seems like, you know, the more people can get out and actually see for themselves the effects that we're having on. You know,
que c'est bien que les trailers voient d'eux-mêmes la fonte des glaciers, l'environnement, le réchauffement de la planète et qu'on se rende compte de ce qui se passe en traversant, en passant les chemins et c'est quand même bien triste.
Yeah, I think it's very important. I've always been a believer, I mentioned in the video too, the more people that can see the wild places, maybe they don't have to race, maybe they don't have to do an ultra trail race, but just to get out there and see it for their own eyes or experience our connection. So I always am a believer. In Europe, I think they're more open to having bigger events, and you know, the use and the management of the land is differently. In the US, we want to seem to protect it, but I don't feel like enough people are getting out exploring, and less children are, you know, going out in the woods and the mountains. And so I think it is our duty to encourage more use, and I think you can do that responsibly. In the US, we have very restrictive rules and regulations, so there's a lot of debate about should we let more people use the wilderness or should we keep it wild? And like you said, the glaciers are melting. Other things are happening that aren't an issue of people getting in the wilderness. So I think it's a fine balance of responsibly, you know, bringing more people and impacting it. How can we do that? So.
And I think you kind of did a lot to start that debate.
Yeah.
You know,
it's an important question, and it's a lot harder. I mean, for me, I'm always blown away when you see it firsthand, when you see the glaciers melting. It's a wake-up call. Yeah, it has more of an impact, I think. And a documentary can do amazing things too, but we need to encourage, I think, people to explore.
On a besoin d'encourager les gens à explorer, à voir ce qui se passe, et aussi c'est difficile de faire la part des choses quand on voit ces courses où il y a 7000 personnes qui courent, mais à côté de ça, c'est bien que les gens se rendent compte, donc c'est le juste milieu de savoir, aux États-Unis, ils ont beaucoup plus de bâtons dans les roues, c'est-à-dire qu'ils modèrent le nombre de coureurs, mais en fait, c'est aussi bien que les gens se rendent compte d'eux-mêmes, ça donne un peu l'awareness.
Awareness.
To
make people more aware.
La sensibilisation.
La sensibilisation, voilà. En utilisant, en étant plus proche des événements et de ce qui se passe dans la nature, qu'on va réagir et se rendre compte. D'un côté, il faut essayer de limiter, mais d'un autre côté, c'est bien que le maximum de personnes soient proches de ces phénomènes pour réagir.
Aux États-Unis, dans les parcs nationaux, la protection elle est même parfois un peu extrême, hein, parce que tu as eu un petit souci avec du champagne, je crois.
Exactly. Yeah. In France, they would laugh because they would encourage it. Yeah.
I'm not sure everybody knows this story.
No, maybe.
Il y a une histoire incroyable qui lui est arrivée à la fin de son grande traversée des Appalaches.
Yeah. And in the U.S., it's just one park, but it's an example, I think, of what you're saying, where what is the balance of use and impact, and so it created a debate. So I think that's the thing. But then when Tommy Caldwell and Kyle Jorgensen, they basically had done the Dawn Wall, and they had 2 bottles of champagne on the top of El Capitan, which is a national park, and nobody said anything. But when I was in a small state park in Maine, it was like a big deal. So it varies, I think, you know, how much protection and the rules, but
the rangers couldn't climb up there.
But they celebrated. Yeah, they had a press conference and everything. So yeah, it's different attitudes. I think it's an example of, you know, one park, Yosemite National Park, and Baxter State Park in Maine, and you know, each one has their own
règles différentes pour certains parcs nationaux.
Et on peut résumer donc le petit souci, tu connais l'histoire.
Donc en gros, il a fêté son arrivée avec le champagne et les rangers, les gardes forestiers lui ont
Ils ont mis une amende parce qu'il avait consommé de l'alcool dans un parc national. Et 2, après, il avait fait tomber de l'alcool par terre, donc il avait pollué les sols. Et 3, il avait donné à manger aux animaux. Il avait bu le champagne. Donc, enfin bon, on rigole, mais c'était de cet ordre-là.
C'est pas donné à les animaux, je pense que c'était un groupe plus que 12 personnes. Le troisième. C'était pour avoir un groupe, mais c'est pas partie des. Il peut expliquer, mais ils sont partis parce qu'ils ont des spectateurs et personnes qui sont là pour monter et pour voir qu'est-ce qui se passe. Et c'est ça. Mais il avait le permis pour 12 personnes. So just so you had.
Yeah. Many people, following and excited, which I think is a good thing. Yeah. It was only 50 people on the mountain, and some people weren't there for my finish. They were there for their own hike, but they wanted to stay and watch. So to me, I think in other cultures, other countries, they kind of laugh like champagne is littering, the little bit of spilling champagne or the group size. But in the U.S., I think so it's brought a good question, which unfortunately, I was the one who started that.
Expliquer aux rangers que le champagne est plus sain pour le corps que le Coca-Cola.
Explain to the rangers that champagne is better than Coke.
Was Dusty disgusted it was champagne?
No, he said, "I'm proud of you." Like, I'm proud of you.
Dusty était là, il était fier.
Dusty a dit qu'il était fier. Une dernière question parce que c'est
yeah, I was interested in the film. Obviously, they're showing you practicing yoga and talking a bit about the mental side. It would be good just to hear a bit more about whether it's yoga or other things you do, how they help you in racing and in training, and I guess more generally in sort of dealing with life.
Yeah, how the other types of training, like
mental practices.
Mental.
Je voudrais savoir s'il y a d'autres choses à part le yoga, l'entraînement, dans la vie courante qui génère ces préparations pour la course.
And for me, like, I never thought I would be doing yoga. Like, I grew up Minnesota hunting and fishing boy, so like yoga was for people that were totally different than me. And then things like meditation, and by going to yoga classes and being influenced by yoga, I did a lot with breath. And so when I spoke in the video about using breath, like sometimes when I'm fatigued and everyone's been there where your muscles are hurting, sometimes I try to focus on things to keep me in the present moment. So that's where breath has been helpful. We're just tuning into how I'm breathing, whether I actually count the amount I inhale, exhale. When I was on the Appalachian Trail, Jenny jokes because everybody said I sounded like a horse. I had horse lips, but sometimes I breathe where I'm like just focus on like breathing out like that. It just like takes my mind off of like the pain that I'm having, and so I think it can be super helpful. And much like meditation, breath work, any way of, I guess, not controlling the mind, but freeing the mind of the constant doubt or the feeling like it's too far, my legs hurt, it's too hot out. So when you're in the race, find ways to stay motivated on Friday, Saturday, because your mind will always want to tell you stop, slow down. So I think for me it's been very important to have other things more than just training and racing. Sorry, it's a little.
Non, en gros, pour lui, il pensait que c'était pas pour lui le yoga, la méditation, toutes ces choses-là. Il disait que c'était pour les autres, mais pas pour lui. Et puis petit à petit, en venant, il s'est aperçu que ça l'aidait beaucoup dans la concentration, pour la respiration, et aussi, surtout en course, quand il essayait de déconcentrer sa tête, son esprit par la respiration, et ça l'aidait à sortir d'une concentration totale et de passer les mauvais moments. Et donc ça a beaucoup, il pense que ça joue beaucoup pour lui, la méditation et le yoga.
In preparation and physical running and training, it's important, strength, but there are times where you can be the best prepared runner, and if your mind isn't strong in the race, that's where ultras, they say, there's a saying that it's they're 90% mental and the other 10% is mental too. So it's a lot in your head, as many of you know. It's you have to have the legs, you have to have the heart and lungs, but a lot of it is in the mind and even beyond the mind. You have to go beyond.
C'est hyper important, peut-être parce que le moral, parce qu'on dit que on a beau être prêt physiquement, mais dans une course d'ultra, il y a un saying qui dit que c'est 90% dans la tête et 10% dans la tête. Donc c'est hyper important d'être bien dans sa tête pour réussir.
The definition of ultra is to go beyond. I think we go beyond the body, the mind, and find that strength. So.
La définition de l'ultra, c'est le surpassement, au-delà des limites.
Je peux mettre une dernière question. Alors, est-ce qu'il a une réponse sur le fait que les coureurs américains ont du mal à s'imposer pour le moment sur l'ITMB, alors que quelques coureurs européens, je pense à Kylian Jornet, Sébastien Chéniaud, François Den, eux ont réussi déjà sur des grandes courses aux États-Unis. Est-ce que c'est l'esprit trail qui est différent entre l'Europe et les États-Unis qui fait que...
Do you have, can you say, do you know why the Americans are struggling at UTMB?
It's always the big question.
And why Europeans are succeeding in the States?
Yeah.
No fast food.
Exactly. Yeah. We don't have our McDonald's here now. That's not true. There's McDonald's here. It's a very good question. Every time I have many people ask this question, and I always try to think to myself why. Because the American women have done very well at UTMB. I don't know. It must be a curse on the men because Nikki Kimball, Chrissy Mail, Rory Bazio. I mean, they've all done very well. So like the American women are doing great, but the men, I think, I don't know. Like maybe it's the atmosphere and the pressure in the competition is so great here, but we also have very big competition in the U.S. So I don't know. Or maybe sometimes I've thought at UTMB, it's also the weather is interesting because it's the humidity is actually quite high, but you don't feel it. It's cool enough, and I think some of the top Americans have become dehydrated. I know in my I've kept that when I've raced. I felt like that wasn't what did it for me, but I know for some athletes they didn't realize how dehydrated their stomach had problems, and I think it's the dehydration. It's cool enough, but it's not hot and humid. Like in the U.S., we have the humidity, but it's usually hot. And I think here, maybe the temperature, the weather, yeah, I don't know what it is. Or maybe it's the curse of the mountains and it helps. But it's fascinating because we can compete against the Europeans in the U.S., maybe Asia. But it's what it is. Yeah. Maybe this year. Yeah.
Next year for you?
Maybe. And maybe this year, we have Sage Kennedy, his first 100-miler. Rob Krar is not racing, but we keep trying. Yes.
Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe. It's interesting. Yeah.
Merci. Merci Scott.
Alors voilà. Tomorrow for those of you racing tomorrow, yeah.
Vous avez un stylo? Ouais, on a un stylo. Ouais. Merci, merci.